Some outbreaks of rain in the far north of Scotland, but even here it tends to dry up and brighten up by the afternoon. Lots of sunshine breaking out widely across the UK. Saturday looking like the best day of the weekend for dry and fine weather. And with that sunshine, temperatures up to 16, 18 Celsius, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Could see 20 in the east of Scotland, but more widely 20 to 24 Celsius further south across England and parts of Wales. But as temperatures rise, there is a threat of showers or thunderstorms breaking out on Saturday night, initially southwestern areas and then developing more widely across the southern half of the UK. The greatest risk of lightning around the English Channel coast, but it's going to keep things mild overnight. So the brightest skies first thing across Scotland and Northern Ireland on Sunday morning. But even here there'll be some cloud and showers pushing into southern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland during the morning. Further south, a brighter end to Saturday, but further showers arriving overnight. And then Monday, Tuesday look more unsettled with rain or showers for many.
I'm Liam Halligan. Join me every weekday at 1 p.m. for On the Money, your daily dose of economics, business and consumer news. I've got 25 years experience covering economics and finance. We hold grown-up discussions with a host of experts who really know their stuff. We can't buy gas and store it. That was a mistake, wasn't it?
I think it was a mistake.
Even you, Liam, don't have a crystal ball.
Inflation's a real threat.
Every weekday at 1, you're On the Money.
Join me, Gloria De Piero, Monday to Thursday at noon for The Briefing. We go to the parts of Parliament that you won't see elsewhere. Plus, there's exclusive interviews with MPs from all parties.
But quite often, they paper over the real truth. Why does a working class lad like you join the Tories?
That's a good question.
Don't miss it, Monday to Thursdays at noon on GB News.
Since the first Gulf War, I've covered complex conflicts around the globe. For comprehensive coverage of the ongoing situation in Ukraine, join me, Alistair Stewart, every Saturday and Sunday from noon.
If you are the most authoritarian regime, at some point they will rise up.
We can become more dangerous.
You cannot occupy a country of that size.
And that means World War III.
That means war.
Putin did not expect that.
That's me, Alistair Stewart, from 12, Saturday and Sunday on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Co.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
with honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GBNews,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon and welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of those big topics hitting the headlines right now. Now, this show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall, and also broadcaster Danny Kelly. Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon. The top stories today. Unions are threatening national strikes over government plans to axe around 90,000 civil service jobs. The Prime Minister said he wants to free up billions of pounds to ease the cost of living crisis. Downing Street hasn't ruled out compulsory redundancies, but it's hoped a lot of the cuts will occur through natural attrition. Brexit Opportunities Minister Jacob Rees-Mogg says the cull will make the government more efficient.
What is being proposed is a hiring freeze. Up to 38,000 people leave the civil service every year. So over 2 to 3 years, that's how you achieve this number. And then if those jobs are essential, ministers can sign off people being moved into them so that you can continue the level of service simply with a smaller number of people.
In Northern Ireland, Assembly members at Stormont are today voting on whether to elect a new Speaker after the DUP said it was planning to block the process. The DUP says the move will send a clear message to the European Union and the government that the post-Brexit trading agreement isn't working and that the Northern Ireland Protocol puts peace at risk in the country. DUP party leader Sir Geoffrey Donaldson says the party won't nominate a Deputy First Minister, in effect preventing a new executive from forming. Former Brexit Minister Lord Frost says politicians need to find another way forward.
Make progress in Northern Ireland, you need the consent of both communities and all range of opinion, and it's very clear that that doesn't exist. And the DUP's refusing to nominate a Speaker and to take part in the institution simply symbolises that fact. It doesn't cause it, it just makes it obvious. It makes clear what we have been saying for a long time, which is that you can only proceed by consensus.
Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe's husband says the Prime Minister didn't explicitly apologise for how her detention in Iran had been handled. The former British aid worker, who was held captive for 6 years, met Boris Johnson for the first time since returning to the UK last March. And she told him she'd lived in the shadow of his words, which had had a big impact on her for the best part of 4.5 years. Richard Ratcliffe said there were lessons to be learned from the handling of his wife's detention.
She wanted to say to him, I just want you to know that the mistake, the comments in 2017 had a lasting impact, and even when I was being interrogated at the airport, interrogated just before my last day, they brought up and said, listen, just tell us now, because obviously your foreign section and then Prime Minister reveals what you've been doing. You can tell us what you were really doing. It wasn't just during a holiday. She said, no, I lived with that for ages, and I know it was a mistake, but it lingered.
The UK has announced 12 new sanctions against Russia, targeting President Putin's financial network, including those of his wider family. The Foreign Secretary, who's in Germany for a G7 meeting, says pressure also needs to be applied on Moscow by supplying more weapons to Ukraine. The EU has announced it's providing a further £425 million worth of military support, and it hopes a deal can be reached for an embargo on Russian oil. The celebrity Colleen Rooney has told a court she was fuming after an article about an alleged car accident appeared in The Sun. Giving evidence at the so-called Wagatha Christie libel trial at the High Court in London, she said the car crash didn't happen, and she suspected Rebecca Vardy of leaking stories from her social media account. She said the sting operation she mounted was a last resort. Mrs Vardy denies allegations she leaked false stories, deleted WhatsApp messages or spoke to journalists. The trial continues. Elon Musk's £34.5 billion Twitter deal has been put on hold, but he says he's still committed to the acquisition. The Tesla CEO says he's waiting for data on the number of spam and fake accounts, which are thought to represent less than 5% of users. One of Mr Musk's key aims is, in his own words, to defeat the spam bots. And finally, the Queen has attended day 2 of the Royal Windsor Horse Show. Smiling and looking relaxed in the front of the car, there had been speculation she might not make it to the annual event after missing the state opening of Parliament. More than 500 horses and 1,000 performers are taking part in the grounds of Windsor Castle. The monarch has attended every year since it began in 1943. It's the first major event in the Queen's Platinum Jubilee festivities, celebrating her 70-year reign. Those are your top stories. We'll have more for you as they happen. Right now, it's time for Nana Akua.
So it's just coming up to 7 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. The unflushable Tony Blair returns. Immortalised in a bad way for his war in Iraq that many consider illegal, the invasion based on a dodgy dossier, remember that? He briefly came up for air to advise us on the withdrawal of Afghanistan, a nation-building exercise he helped create as a direct consequence and an absolute disaster. The cheek of him. And more recently, he resurfaced with a load of tripe about an arbitrary target for students to attend university by 2050. I think he suggested something in the region of 50%, a figure that he must have simply plucked from the air, and one that his own son, Ewan, disagreed with. Ewan went further, suggesting scrapping GCSEs. But my God, Tony Blair has finally resurfaced and come up with something sensible that even the tofu-munching, left-leaning, liberal elite Guardian have printed. Tony Blair has told Keir Starmer to drop woke politics and focus on the economy. Bravo! He said the party should plant Labour's feet clearly near the centre of gravity of the British people, who want fair treatment for all and an end to prejudice, but distrust and dislike the casual cancel culture, the woke mentality. I.e., like being so woke you're scared to define a woman and whether she has a penis or not, just in case you offend a minority of people who, on a whole, wouldn't be offended in any case. I mean, this mentality is a contradiction in terms. It boasts inclusivity whilst excluding anyone who disagrees with its narrative and is, frankly, a distraction. Now, a report published by the Tony Blair Institute basically confirmed what we all already know, that nobody trusts the Labour Party with the economy, and that even Remainers weren't prepared to back them at the 2019 election, despite the Tories getting in on the Get Brexit Done mantra. And even Tony Blair, their longest-serving leader, has noticed it. Instead of focusing on the economy, the Labour Party of late have been obsessed with moralising. I mean, remember all the emotional stories that Keir Starmer kept going on and on about during the Partygate thing? No mention of the cost of living until, thank God, Beergate came along and knocked him off his moral high chair, forcing him to focus on the economy, to take the eyes off him and all the inconsistencies in his stories. The British public deserve to be respected, not patronised. This obsessive distraction with trying to find offence means that nothing gets done. We're not stupid. We are able to make pretty good judgments on our own. I think the message is finally getting through to the Labour Party. Go woke and go broke. I can't believe what I'm saying, but Tony Blair is right. I know. Right, before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. For my Great British Debate this hour, I'll be asking, should we scrap the Northern Ireland Protocol? The leader of the DUP confirmed today that he will not support the election of a new Stormont Speaker, meaning that the Assembly cannot sit. The party has been focusing against post-Brexit trading arrangements. And until the matter of the protocol can be resolved, the government in Northern Ireland remains paralysed. So I'm asking, should we scrap the Northern Ireland Protocol? Now, on Friday Focus at 5, we'll be discussing no-fault evictions and why they're going to be banned. Among the 38 bills outlined during the state opening of Parliament was the Renters Reform Bill, which will abolish no-fault evictions and strengthen landlords' rights of possession. The objective to provide a fair and effective market for both tenants and landlords. But will this leave renters vulnerable and landlords stuck with tenants? And later on, I'll be joined by Dr. Nathan Spence to look into the long waits for ambulances across the UK and the dangerous impact that this is having on patient safety. Now, that's all coming up in the next hour. As ever, you can tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me @gbnews. Usually there's a sting there, but they've decided to take it out. It's in, out, shake it all about. Right, so let's get started. Welcome again to my panel. Former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall and broadcaster Danny Kelly. Right, so I'm going to look at you both. Right, first of all, I want to discuss the story we've been talking about, because Tony Blair, my God, he had a good time as the leader initially until he came up with the war in Iraq and the dodgy dossier, and then we realised it was total nonsense that we'd done this thing. But since then, he keeps resurfacing and saying things that, you're thinking, well, that's great, but it's not really that interesting. But finally, he said something decent.
He has, and I agree with you. He's right on this, and it feels very strange to be, as a Conservative, to say that the former Labour leader is correct. But he is, and he pops up every now and again and says something and then disappears. But this, I think, will resonate with the British public more than absolutely anything else.
Yeah.
He is spot on. The left needs to work out that the country as a whole is grown up enough to deal with comments, with statues, with people having different opinions and all the rest of it. So I think, yeah, absolutely good on him for this, and I support what he said.
You see, some people will really be literally tying their teeth behind their head because they won't want to give Tony Blair any credit whatsoever. But I'm prepared to do that. I'm able to, accept that he's done something good. Danny?
Yeah, like you, I have nothing but disdain, really, for Tony Blair. I think it's true because although, listen, we're talking about the Good Friday Agreement later on in the show, and we must credit him for that. So we're going to credit Tony Blair later on in the show because he was instrumental, along with Bertie Ahern, the Irish Prime Minister, or is it Taoiseach? OK, so I credit him for that. What I don't credit him for is the dodgy dossier and the wars that have followed that. If I may just address something he said in his article for The Guardian, please.
Yes, go.
OK, so The Guardian, you're right, The Guardian have picked up on this. Tony Blair, in a punchy forward, Tony Blair claims of a certain group, a large number voted Conservative despite agreeing with the party on Brexit. They thought Labour's far-left economic policy was a bigger threat than Brexit.
You're thinking of food again, Danny, for goodness sake, every time.
What that tells me
so early in the show
is that
well.
those people who voted Remain, but then voted Conservative with the mantra, get Brexit done, they're Democrats. They understand that even though it's 2019, 3 years before that was the referendum, and Tony Blair still can't get past that. They're Democrats, Tony, lad. So the fact that he's saying, despite get Brexit done, they still voted for Conservative.
Well, exactly. That's what we're saying in the monologue, frankly, that people who are Remainers, who voted to Remain, despite the whole mantra of the Conservative Party, which was get Brexit done, they still weren't prepared to trust the Labour Party with the economy. And that's the bottom line, really.
And it is, and I think they've got good cause to be suspicious of the Labour Party because they don't seem to have any plans for the cost of living crisis. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that the Conservative government are on top of everything. But Labour don't seem to be putting anything forward. They're all right, they go on about a windfall tax and say that the government isn't doing enough. Well, OK, what is their policy? Where are their plans to get the cost of living crisis under control? Because I don't see it. It's all very well to sit in the sidelines and say, you're not doing enough, you're awful. But the voters disagreed with them.
Yeah, well, to be fair, they've been pushed on the windfall tax, and it looks like Boris Johnson will backtrack and probably do that, which to me, it makes no sense why they didn't do that in the first place. Even the boss of BP saying, yeah, no, we'll just, we'll be OK with it. I mean, and actually the profit was on the additional profit, not the unexpected profit. say it wasn't really that big a deal. And also, I would go further. I would actually put a tax on those companies that benefited during the pandemic through the policies of the government. So companies like Amazon and Deliveroo and all those companies that specifically got the business of the general public because of the lockdown situation, I'd clobber them as well.
Just to get back to the central point about whether wokeness is the right direction for Labour to go, and The Guardian actually printing this, they're tying themselves up in knots about what they can and what they can't say. The fact is when questioned, is it possible for a woman to have a penis, and they just clam up. They need to come out and say, listen, women can't have penises. I have one, you two have vaginas.
Thank you for that, Danny. I mean,
nice little biology
if anyone's eating or doing anything at this point, you didn't need all that.
So, and they need to just say that.
Yeah.
But
the thing is, actually, to even be drawn into the whole conversation with it, I mean, at least Wes Streeting, at least he said, as far as I know, he said a very short biology lesson, men have penises, women have vaginas, biology lesson over. I mean, that should literally be as succinct as it should be. It shouldn't be then a long conversation about this whole thing and then even being so...
It's curious you say that, because I've highlighted what Wes Streeting said, telling an interviewer, and this is in the same article, men have penises, women have vaginas. Here ends my biology.
That's what I've just said.
No,
literally.
but what
Did I
he doesn't
say
no, but what he doesn't say. He wasn't pressed, can a woman have a penis? So what he says is men have them. The interviewer should have asked, OK, we know men have them, but can women have them?
No, because I think the whole point of this
Or does that sentence address it,
No,
do you
he's just
think?
addressed it straight away.
I think it does. I think
You do? OK.
I think, this whole tying yourself up in knots, I think
I'm starting
perhaps
to
you're trying to do the
Maybe you need to vote for the Labour Party. And also, you didn't hear it. I've already said that. I've literally said that.
I know you did. I'm not saying that you
And I
didn't.
said it without reading it as well, because I'd read the article and memorised it, Danny.
No, you're right. You're better than me. But
a referee.
I just thought that there was room for him to still say that it was possible for a woman to have one.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm wrong.
But isn't that the point, though, that everybody is tying themselves up in knots, desperate not to offend anybody, when you are always going to offend somebody?
Yeah.
And
you have to get over that.
And whilst you're wasting time on the minutiae of detail, which is incorrect anyway, because you're saying that women, by effectively not accepting that women don't have penises, you're actually saying that they could have one, which wouldn't be a real one if it was one. So
a prosthetic.
Exactly. We can all have something prosthetic made. If, I could have one of those if I wanted to, but it's not actually the real thing, is it?
They need to firm up their stance on
What I'm saying is by focusing on that, and Keir Starmer focused on Partygate, and by focusing on that, they're missing the point that the electorate are concerned about the economy. The electorate are concerned about we want a strong party to go up against the Conservative Party, and that's what they missed. They missed that moment where they could have been strong, but they focused on Partygate, and then Beergate came along and knocked them off the moral high
Do you
seat.
think the electorate can forgive him for taking the knee like that after BLM, after the terrible murder of George Floyd? Because that's there, isn't it, on record, him taking the knee. I'm not sure the working class... I've just driven down from Coventry. I'm not sure the working class man or woman having a pint tonight in a boozer in Coventry city centre will actually think that that's something that should be deemed admirable.
Claire?
But don't you think that these things happen, and that was his stance on it, whether you agree or you disagree. And that's done and it's moved on, and it's a bit like, as you say, Partygate, Beergate, it's the next thing and the next thing. I think the general public largely are now really just fed up with the whole thing. They're looking at the cost of their gas and electricity, they're looking at their food costs going up, they're looking at their income stagnating and perhaps their mortgage and rent increasing. So I'm not convinced these days that the public will go look back at that and say, oh, yes, do you remember when Keir Starmer took the knee? I just don't.
May I ask you, do you think he'd take the knee again?
Yes, I think he probably would.
Really?
Yeah, no, I do.
He would do.
I think there's the consistency there.
Oh, wow.
No. Whether you agree or disagree.
But it's all this gesture politics, it's all this moralising, it's all this... When actually there's... Yes, I agree with the level of morality that you should have in politics, but your stance should be looking for the British public and our interests. And most people in this country are very nice people.
Yes, that's
as far as I know. Like when people say, oh, the British public are racist and things like that. I've grown up, I was born in 71, I was born in the 70s in this country, in Newcastle upon Tyne. I'm a Geordie, what a ruler. See, I know my stuff. But I was, and everyone, 99.9% of the people were lovely. There were so few of them who, I didn't really experience the negativity that people talk about. So you don't need to keep coming out with this, the British public. We want you to get on with the job of actually looking at the economy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you whatsoever. I mean, looking at my residents in my council ward, they just want to make sure their bins are emptied, the roads are sorted and schools are up to standard. They don't really care about the rest.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Right, so if you just joined me, where have you been? You're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, should we scrap the Northern Ireland Protocol? In the last couple of minutes, the Northern Irish Assembly has failed to elect a speaker. Now, the Northern Irish Assembly met for the first time since May the 5th election, but the Democratic Unionist Party did not agree to the election of a new Stormont speaker over Sinn Féin's plans to uphold the Northern Irish Protocol. Now, that might all not make much sense to you, but don't worry, Arlene will explain it all. So until the issue is resolved, the government in Northern Ireland is basically paralysed, a bit like what we were when the whole Brexit thing came in. Do you remember that? So I'll be asking, should we scrap the Northern Ireland Protocol? Send me your thoughts, GBViews at gbnews.uk. Tell me what you think, and you can also tweet at GBNews. There is a poll up right now asking that question, should we scrap the Northern Ireland Protocol? Cast your vote now, but first let's get some weather.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. It's turned into a fine day for most of us, but it's still fairly windy in the north and there is some rain around. Most of it associated with a couple of weather fronts crossing the far north of Scotland, so northern and western Scotland, and for some parts of northwest England, mainly over the hills, it's a damp afternoon. A lot of cloud in the north as well, northern England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, but some breaks developing as we head through the evening. The wind also easing following a blustery day, patchy cloud for Wales in the southwest, but lengthy clear spells elsewhere. And as that wind dies down with those clear spells, well, it'll be a fresh night. Temperatures dipping into the single figures for many and down to 2 to 4 Celsius in some sheltered spots. Nevertheless, it's a bright start to the weekend for many of us. Some outbreaks of rain in the far north of Scotland, but even here it tends to dry up and brighten up by the afternoon. Lots of sunshine breaking out widely across the UK. Saturday looking like the best day of the weekend for dry and fine weather. And with that sunshine, temperatures up to 16, 18 Celsius, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Could see 20 in the east of Scotland, but more widely 20 to 24 Celsius further south across England and parts of Wales. But as temperatures rise, there is a threat of showers or thunderstorms breaking out on Saturday night, initially southwestern areas and then developing more widely across the southern half of the UK. The greatest risk of lightning around the English Channel coast, but it's going to keep things mild overnight. So the brightest skies first thing across Scotland and Northern Ireland on Sunday morning. But even here there'll be some cloud and showers pushing into southern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland during the morning. Further south, a brighter end to Saturday, but further showers arriving overnight. And then Monday, Tuesday look more unsettled with rain or showers for many.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Co.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
So it's fast approaching 26 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, before the break, we were discussing Labour's war on wokery, and let's see what you've been saying. Marion says Sir Keir Starmer and Tony Blair are just the same, both just solicitors with no charisma. I would not vote for Keir if it was the last politician on earth. Hope he is toast. That's not very nice, is it? Sam says neither Keir Starmer nor Tony Blair were or are credible leaders. Blair is just saying this for the headlines and publicity. Potentially, do you think? Frank says we have bigger things to think about right now than defending what a woman is. I care more about whether I can buy the weekly shop for my family. Labour are out of touch. David says, why the big deal about what Blair said? Many people have been saying it for years, but he says it and he gets a clap. I don't get it. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Right, so let's do this. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. It's time now for our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should we scrap the Northern Ireland Protocol? Now, in the last couple of minutes, the Northern Irish Assembly has failed to elect a speaker. Now, the Northern Irish Assembly met for the first time since the May the 5th election, but the Democratic Unionist Party, or DUP, did not agree to the election of the new Stormont Speaker over Sinn Féin's plans to uphold the Northern Irish Protocol. Now, you see, thankfully, Arlene is here. We're going to talk to her about it. She can explain all of it. Now, Unionist politicians have protested against the protocol, a part of the UK-EU Brexit deal, which keeps Northern Ireland aligned with the EU's single market for goods. The move was designed to ensure free trade could continue across the Irish border. Now, until the issue is resolved, the government in Northern Ireland is basically paralysed. So, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should we scrap the Northern Ireland Protocol? Well, of course, who's best to explain it all? GB News presenter, colleague and former First Minister of Northern Ireland, Arlene Foster. Arlene.
Well, I hope I am a solicitor with a little bit of charisma.
You've got loads of charisma, Arlene.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that. But look, this isn't a surprise this afternoon that a speaker hasn't been elected. It was expected. It happened back in 2019 when I was the First Minister as well. There was a speaker refused to be elected at that stage by Sinn Féin, so it happened. But I think the key thing is the protocol. Because it is disrupting the operation of the Belfast Agreement, there's a real need for it to be sorted out, Nana.
So can the Assembly function without a speaker, or is that what happens?
No, the Assembly can't function without a speaker. That's why it needs to be sorted out as quickly as possible.
OK, so... Yeah. And is that something they'll do? What is it? Everyone votes and there's just a...
No, because in Northern Ireland, again, and this is different, obviously, from Scotland and Wales, there has to be a cross-community vote. So, in other words, a majority of unionism and a majority of nationalism have to agree that Mr X or Mrs X should be the Speaker, and they weren't able to do that today.
See, now, OK, so just briefly, because I know people hear a lot about Northern Ireland Protocol, what is it? Very briefly, just explain it to somebody who's watching, that keeps hearing about it and doesn't quite get it.
Sure. So the Northern Ireland Protocol was agreed. It had two functions. First of all, to protect the European Union single market, to stop goods coming across from Great Britain into Northern Ireland and then seeping into the Republic of Ireland, which, of course, is still in the European single market. And secondly, it was meant to secure the Belfast Agreement. And, of course, it hasn't done that. It's actually done the opposite. It's caused real societal and economic damage.
And, of course, the Belfast is the Good Friday Agreement as well.
The Good Friday Agreement. Some people call it the Good Friday Agreement, but it's actually the Belfast Agreement is its official title.
I see. So if, for example, just say, for example, we said, OK, we're going to scrap it.
Yeah.
The people would all have to agree that it would be scrapped.
No, the UK government is sovereign in Northern Ireland, so they can decide what they're going to do. And I think a lot of people have been talking about if they do that, then that'll cause a trade war in Europe. Well, actually, and this is where it gets pretty technical, under the WTO rules, it actually they are only able to take action which is proportionate to the harm that is caused by removing the protocol. And there won't be any harm by removing the protocol because there's a minimal risk to the single market from goods coming across from Great Britain into Northern Ireland. Very few of those goods go into the European single market, and those goods that do that can be checked remotely. They don't need to be checked at the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. They can be checked through digital processes and alternative arrangements.
So what's the objection then? If that's so straightforward, and from the way you've explained it, it sounds perfectly logical. Why the EU? Where's the bit with the EU? What is the issue there?
Well, the issue is the European Union has always used Northern Ireland as a sort of a tool to kick the UK for having the temerity to leave the European Union, if I'm frank about it, and there's always been difficulties there. And they have said very clearly they don't want a border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. I think by that they mean they don't want a physical border. We don't have a physical border anymore. That left us when the Troubles left Northern Ireland. That was the reasons why we had a physical border. In terms of the differences in VAT and in terms of sterling and euros, we still have that border there. So it works in respect of currency. It works in respect of VAT. So why can't it work in terms of goods that come from Great Britain and then go into the Republic of Ireland through Northern Ireland? It can work very well, but there isn't the will to make it work, Nana, and that's the fundamental problem.
And the will is coming from the European Union?
The will's not coming from the European Union. The will not to change it. And I think government has finally come to the point where they're saying, we've tried to negotiate, we put down a command paper in July of last year, we told you what we wanted and what we needed to see for the sovereignty of our own country. But the European Union is keeping their heads in the sands and hoping it'll go away. But it'll not go away. And we've seen that now, unfortunately, through the fact that we don't have a Northern Ireland Assembly operating.
Interesting. Well, very, very briefly, the people of Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, where do they stand? Do they have an issue with it?
Well, you see, the problem with the Belfast Agreement is that it said that you had to have consent of the Unionist community and the Nationalist community. The Nationalist community, because they want to look south to Dublin, are content with the protocol. But for the Unionist community in Northern Ireland and everybody that represents the Unionist community in Northern Ireland, they want to see the protocol fundamentally changed because it's damaging that link between Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
Wow, Arlene, thank you so much.
It's very complicated. I don't pretend it's not.
No,
but it can be solved.
But the solution sounds pretty simple. I don't know why they just don't get on with it. Arlene, thank you so much for talking to me about that. Okay. Very clear and succinct. I hope that explained it to you right. Let's see. I'm also joined by Professor Lee Jones, who's a professor of political economy and international relations at Queen Mary University of London. Right. So let's see. So for you then, so the Northern Ireland Protocol, Arlene's explained it pretty succinctly. What are the benefits then of having this protocol? Who benefits?
Well, I should say to begin with, my personal views, I don't favour the protocol because it's undemocratic, because it subjects the people of Northern Ireland to rules that are devised by the European Union, and that is an organisation that's comprised of governments that nobody in Northern Ireland elected. So I think it's problematic for a whole host of reasons, in addition to the problems that Arlene Foster's just pointed out. I think basically there are two groups that do favour it. As Arlene just said, for some in the north, particularly nationalists, a majority of voters, in fact, have just voted in Northern Ireland for parties that support the retention of the protocol in some form. And for them, it's a way to avoid a hard border in Ireland. So there are concerns about the potential disruption to cross-border trade, to employment, to social life, and so on. But as we've seen, keeping a soft border in Ireland means that you get a rather hard border between Northern Ireland and Great Britain, because the EU will demand that to retain the integrity of the single market. And then I think there's a second group that benefit from the protocol, and that's the European Union itself and its supporters within the UK, because for them, the protocol is a way to neutralise Brexit. Because
Professor,
the more that great
time, Professor, we'll have to go to the news, but we hear you. I get what you're saying, Professor Lee Jones. Thank you so much for joining us. He's there from Queen Mary University. Right, so you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online, and on digital radio. After the break, we'll continue with the Great British Debate. I'm asking, should we scrap the Northern Ireland Protocol? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, former Conservative advisor Blair Pearsall, and also broadcaster Danny Kelly. First, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you. Well, as you've been hearing, in Northern Ireland, the Stormont Assembly has failed to elect a new Speaker. It comes after the Democratic Unionist Party, the DUP, said it wouldn't be supporting the process as part of its protest against the Northern Ireland Protocol. The DUP saying the move would send a clear message to the EU and the government that the post-Brexit trading agreement isn't working and that the Northern Ireland Protocol puts peace at risk in the country. Former Brexit Minister Lord Frost says politicians need to find another way forward.
Make progress in Northern Ireland, you need the consent of both communities and all range of opinion. And it's very clear that that doesn't exist. And the DUP's refusing to nominate a speaker and to take part in the institution simply symbolises that fact. It doesn't cause it. It just makes it obvious. It makes clear what we have been saying for a long time, which is that you can only proceed by consensus.
Well, also in the news today, unions are threatening national strikes over government plans to axe around 90,000 civil service jobs. The Prime Minister wants to free up billions of pounds to ease the cost of living crisis. Downing Street hasn't ruled out compulsory redundancies, but it's hoped a lot of the cuts will occur through people just leaving. Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe's husband says the Prime Minister didn't explicitly apologise for how her detention in Iran was handled. The former British aid worker, who was held captive for 6 years, met Boris Johnson for the first time since returning to the UK back in March. She told the Prime Minister she'd lived in the shadow of his words, which had had a big impact on her for the best part of 4.5 years. And smiling and looking relaxed, Her Majesty the Queen has attended the Royal Windsor Horse Show. The monarch has attended every year since it began in 1943, and it's the first major event in the Queen's Platinum Jubilee festivities calendar, celebrating her 70-year reign. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, you're with GB News. More news when we come back.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Co.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
So good afternoon. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. It's just coming up to 39 minutes after 4 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. Right, so after the break, we talked about the Great British debate. We asked whether we should scrap the Northern Ireland Protocol because in the last couple of minutes we mentioned that the Northern Irish Assembly has failed to elect a speaker. The Northern Irish Assembly met for the first time since the 5th of May, their election, due to the Democratic Unionist Party. They did not agree to the election of the new Stormont Speaker, and over Sinn Féin's plans to uphold the Northern Irish Protocol. If that makes no sense, we did explain earlier. Hopefully you're keeping up. Now, unionist politicians have also protested against the protocol, a part of the UK-EU Brexit deal, which keeps Northern Ireland aligned with the EU's single market for trade. So basically, as you understand it, it's the movement of goods. Now, this is also designed to ensure free trade so that it could continue across the Irish border. But until the issue is resolved, the government, in Northern Ireland cannot do anything at all because obviously with no speaker, they can't assemble. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should we scrap the Northern Ireland Protocol? It's too complicated by half. Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall and also broadcaster Danny Kelly. Right, so, Danny, we'll start with you. Northern Ireland Protocol, it's all about movement of goods across the borders. What do you think?
As I understand it, I read an article written by Lord Frost. As I understand it, he said that the Belfast Agreement potentially could be on life support. Now, I think keeping the Union together, I like the United Kingdom. I don't want to just be Great Britain. I like the 4 entities, Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales and England. And I don't want this to be a referendum on whether Ireland should be a whole island again. And it's funny that you've chosen, and I think it's so illustrative of potentially what could go wrong. Welcome to Northern Ireland with bullet holes in it, which is what you've just put on the screen for all of your viewers.
I didn't put it on there.
Sure, but the station. Okay, a little reminder into recent history, yeah? And that's something that I don't want to see again. And if it means ripping up the protocol, as far as I'm aware, the EU could start a trade war. OK, I would say, so what? Have you seen how many Volkswagens are on the road?
Yeah.
How many Audis are on the road? How many BMWs are on the road?
Well, that's it, isn't it?
The German car industry, they call these little isles of ours Treasure Island. You know, we're in a strong negotiating position.
Why,
we really are.
Why, I don't understand why. I appreciate that the EU want to sort of maintain the integrity of the EU and the whole issue with Brexit that they're not happy about. But I don't see why they don't just agree to it. I mean, I don't understand why they're making it so difficult.
Well, I mean, it is a extremely complicated area, and I did deal with some of it when I was at the Home Office back in 2018 to do with immigration and free movement, because obviously that was coming to an end with Brexit. So there are so many pieces of it, and the Northern Ireland Protocol is one of those issues which has never been resolved. And in Theresa May's time, as former Prime Minister, she put down the idea of the backstop, which was the magic word going around. So we had the backstop, which was then rejected by pretty much everybody.
What was the backstop, for anyone?
It was going to bring the United Kingdom as a whole, so including Northern Ireland, into its own customs bubble, if you like, to put it that way. So you wouldn't have a border down the Irish Sea, you would have this sort of kind of customs union, and then you would still have the trade going across the border into the south. So that seemed to be relatively sensible, but it couldn't be agreed upon. And the DUP voted against it on 3 occasions.
The rest of her deal as well, though. I mean, she just didn't...
Oh, absolutely. I'm not suggesting it was perfect, but it doesn't look like this is perfect either. This is Boris Johnson's oven-ready Brexit deal, which appears to be falling apart. And Lord Frost has written an awful lot and has said an awful lot recently, but he is also the architect of this protocol. So I find it a little uncomfortable that the chief architects of Brexit are now saying, actually, it's not very good, we must just rip it up.
But isn't there a clause in the deal with any negotiation that if it's not working for the union or risks the stability of the union, that it can be upended? And actually, it does risk the stability of the union, so it should be upended. And I suspect that's why they sort of agreed to it, because it seemed as though the EU weren't prepared to go along with any sort of deals anyway. So I don't think, we could all look at it and say, oh, well, the backstop and all this thing, but Theresa May couldn't get anything done anyway. I mean, she was pretty useless,
she couldn't get that through, and it stopped the whole process of Brexit. So I don't disagree with you on that. And I think whatever you put forward to the EU, they will just denounce it as not working. So I'm kind of in your camp here. So what if there's a bit of a trade war? The EU will never forgive us for Brexit, ever.
Yeah.
And I don't see why we should pander to them on this when it's hurting the people in Northern Ireland.
And also, they have a member state that they need to look after.
Absolutely.
The interests of Southern Ireland.
Yeah.
When researching this story, I read that there is a protocol Mark II being suggested where they're going to cut a lot of the red tape. 80% fewer checks on this, 40% fewer checks on that, 60% less red tape for that. It just goes to show how bureaucratic the whole place is. if they can, when threatened, and I'm going to use that word loosely and not in a nasty way, but when threatened, then they're prepared to back down and reduce so much of this red tape and bureaucracy, which was one of the main reasons that some people voted to leave the European Union.
Precisely. I mean, and I think that's the problem. And trade between the south and the north in Ireland has carried on absolutely fine for many, many years. And there is an agreement between both countries that neither of them tend to go against. And they are very clever at doing it. And I think that we really should ask those people what it is they want, because it seems to me that Westminster is putting an awful lot of pressure on Stormont and also the people in the south. And then with, EU kind of bullying in the background, what do the people of Northern Ireland actually want? And I think that's probably slightly more important than what the people of Westminster want.
Well, true, but I think, because obviously you've got the unionists, and they've actually lost their majority, haven't they?
Mm-hmm.
So it would be interesting. But just because the unionists have lost the majority doesn't mean that everybody wants a united Ireland anyway.
Correct.
So that's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I just, it is difficult, isn't it? And maybe people have suggested a referendum in Northern Ireland to see what people actually want there.
What with the potential, the
reunification?
Really?
So potentially for the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland to become one.
I take you back to that bullet hole-ridden sign saying "Welcome to Northern Ireland."
But I mean, but then what it is that why should they have to change things because of the EU?
Yeah,
I don't think they
agree.
should. I think that would be a far greater thing to have to give up, rather than just a potential trade war, which won't happen because we actually, they take more from us.
Mm-hmm.
We buy more off the EU anyway, so I don't really see what the issue is.
And also, some of the concerns are about things like dairy products and raw meat and cooked meat. I would suggest that we, as Great Britain, know how to prepare sausages correctly. We know how to prepare cooked ham correctly and dairy products.
Yeah.
They should trust us.
Well, we
it's
also
not like we
the
have
rules
people
haven't
dropping
changed.
dead in the street after having sausage butties.
The rules haven't changed. The rules are still the same, so the levels of standards are exactly the same. It's not just because we haven't got the new whatever kite mark, the EU kite mark now, because we're not within their single market. We still uphold. We've mirrored, even when we did the deal with them, we mirrored the standards of the EU so that there wouldn't be an issue. So this is simply a way of control, and it's not really
It is. Arguably, our standards are far higher than what is expected of us within the EU rules anyway. So I think, that should be trusted. But I do wonder what really is the mission of Sinn Féin, who look to me as if they've gone on a local campaign and they've managed to secure a majority. But is their mission really unification? And I think they're trying to get that through the back door, and I think that is slightly more concerning and suspicious.
Just very finally, we said we haven't asked the people of Northern Ireland. One thing we do know what the people of Northern Ireland wanted. They wanted to remain in the European Union. That's the only thing that we do know. And from that, you can extrapolate a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but still, they might want that, but in the end, I mean, to be part of the United Kingdom, if you want those two things,
I agree,
it is
but we
mutually,
know that. It's the one thing we do know.
Yeah, that was then. This is now, and now they've seen the way the EU behave. Perhaps they might not
change their mind.
Well, anyway, today I'm asking, should we scrap the Northern Ireland Protocol? And lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. Alan says the protocol is nonsense. There was no need Northern Ireland should have simply left with the UK. No one was going to erect a land border. Complete red herring, I agree with you. As Stephen says, to solve this problem, Ireland needs to become united as one country and one people on the condition that the new unified Ireland becomes part of the UK and leaves the EU. I can't see that happening. Everyone in Ireland and the UK wins. You see, then you've got to get the Republic of Ireland to agree to that, and they might not want to. And I think, wouldn't you say that perhaps a potential trade war would be better than a war? I think so. Roger says, hearing the government may move on the Northern Ireland is good. It'll be right. I believe if the UK and Northern Ireland drop the protocol and stop the EU's silly games, trade paperwork can be done digitally, and this can replace border paperwork between Northern Ireland and the EU island. If the EU insist on the border, then it's up to them to create one, but I'll bet they will climb down. Yes. Do you remember the whole thing about the, the vaccine, where they tried to stop vaccines that they hadn't ordered from leaving their shores? I mean, honestly, Matt says this is a tremendous deal that this government unanimously voted into law and sold to the public as having got Brexit done. Changing this protocol will only harm Northern Ireland as much as the rest of the UK and is a reversal of the pain this country voted for. Do you think so? Let's see what Tyrone says. 100% step away from all treaties with the EU. Wait 3 to 5 years and renegotiate a fixed-term agreement if we need one at that point. Gosh, there's so many of you getting in touch, Elizabeth. I will read yours soon as well. But yes, lots of you up there. Well, let me just quickly read Elizabeth's. Elizabeth says, of course we could scrap the Northern Ireland Protocol. It was only signed as a temporary measure under duress, and it is doing more harm than good. And there is a poll up right now on Twitter throughout the show asking whether the UK should scrap the protocol, and currently 88% of you say yes. Fabulous. Right, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come, doctors and paramedics have said that long waits for ambulances across the UK are having a dangerous impact on patient safety. First, let's get some weather.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. It's turned into a fine day for most of us, but it's still fairly windy in the north and there is some rain around. Most of it associated with a couple of weather fronts crossing the far north of Scotland, so northern and western Scotland, and for some parts of northwest England, mainly over the hills, it's a damp afternoon. A lot of cloud in the north as well, northern England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, but some breaks developing as we head through the evening. The wind also easing following a blustery day, patchy cloud for Wales in the southwest, but lengthy clear spells elsewhere. And as that wind dies down with those clear spells, well, it'll be a fresh night. Temperatures dipping into the single figures for many and down to 2 to 4 Celsius in some sheltered spots. Nevertheless, it's a bright start to the weekend for many of us. Some outbreaks of rain in the far north of Scotland, but even here it tends to dry up and brighten up by the afternoon. Lots of sunshine breaking out widely across the UK. Saturday looking like the best day of the weekend for dry and fine weather. And with that sunshine, temperatures up to 16, 18 Celsius, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Could see 20 in the east of Scotland, but more widely 20 to 24 Celsius further south across England and parts of Wales. But as temperatures rise, there is a threat of showers or thunderstorms breaking out on Saturday night, initially southwestern areas and then developing more widely across the southern half of the UK. The greatest risk of lightning around the English Channel coast, but it's going to keep things mild overnight. So the brightest skies first thing across Scotland and Northern Ireland on Sunday morning. But even here, there'll be some cloud and showers pushing into southern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland during the morning. Further south, a brighter end to Saturday, but further showers arriving overnight. And then Monday, Tuesday look more unsettled with rain or showers for many.
Hello, I'm Alistair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alistair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me. Noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's 2 questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, And I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Co.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
So it's 5 minutes to 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Right now, doctors and paramedics have said that long waits for ambulances across the UK are having a dangerous impact on patient safety. There has been about a 77% rise in the most serious safety incidents logged by paramedics in England over the past year, and that is compared to before the pandemic. And in Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, the 999 system is also under a lot of pressure. Doctors are saying that NHS England said that the safety of patients is its absolute priority. So I'm joined now by Dr. Nathan Spence. Thank you, Nathan, for joining me. You are an NHS doctor. So talk to me, Nathan, about this whole thing, because there seems to be a bit of an issue with the ambulances. Why are they taking so long?
Morning, afternoon, Alan. Nice to be here. I think the problem we have with the ambulance is sort of the final link in the chain, if you like, and blaming the ambulances sort of ignores the problem before it. And the whole system at the minute is under unprecedented pressure. Now, unprecedented is a word we've heard a lot of in the past few years, but what we used to describe as winter pressures don't really exist anymore. We just have systemic pressures all the time. I mean, this in theory should be a quiet time for us. And the issue we have is when we have ambulances coming to the emergency department, the paramedics are with the patient in the ambulance. They can't leave that patient until they've handed it over to a doctor or a clinician in the emergency department. Normally that should take around 15 minutes. That's the target. At the minute, 10% of those patients are waiting up to an hour to be handed over. And that takes that crew off the street, away from seeing our family, our friends, and leave them stranded in the emergency department. So what we need to have is a system in which that part doesn't happen. And that's a complicated thing to try and fix.
It does seem to be complicated. I mean, I was reading that one of the bosses at NHS, she had a stroke, and her partner was not even prepared to call the ambulance because she knew all about it and wasn't going to take the risk. Now, I've heard about bed blocking. That's apparently an issue as well, isn't it? Where the patients end up staying in the ambulance because there's basically nowhere for them to go. And there are even services that come and bring the ambulance people drinks and refreshments. How are we dealing with the bed blocking? Is this an issue?
Absolutely. So again, the ambulance is the symptom. If you treat it like a disease, it's the symptom, but the cause is not necessarily the ambulances themselves. So for patients to come into the emergency department, they need to go from the emergency department to wards. And for them to go to wards, they need beds. And the issue we have is that people are being stuck in hospital. They can't clear out the emergency department, therefore the paramedics get backed up. And why the ward's full, this term bed block is a slightly sort of unfair term. It's not the patient's fault, but there are patients who do get stranded in hospital. And I think that the root of that problem really is looking at social care. It's people who are in hospital, probably medically fit, and I see patients in hospital for sometimes weeks and weeks at a time who are fit, their medical problems are sorted, but they need a care package, they need more support at home, and that's what's taking the time. So there are some strategies that people look at. They try and book out beds in care homes to move these patients to, but these things aren't cheap and they're not quick.
Well, it's an interesting thing. I don't know whether they're ever going to solve it. In terms of the ambulance issue, then, obviously we've got to solve the bed blocking thing. What in your view, do you think needs to happen for this whole ambulance business and the fact that the waiting times are well over an hour? What would you say would be a good move forward to start this process?
I think we need to look at actually something that isn't talked about enough with this problem, and it's the lack of staff we have. And with the combination of COVID and the burnout associated with that, and people, cost of living increase, people aren't being paid enough, they're looking for other careers. And people are leaving in their droves. They're going to other countries, they're leaving the profession entirely. And this is GPs, this is paramedics, this is doctors, this is nurses, this is everybody. So I think throwing money at the problem, yes, more money would help, but it needs to be spent in the right ways. We need a strategy to retain staff. I think staff retention is the key thing here.
Staff retention. Well, Dr. Nathan Spence, thank you so much for your insight and really good to talk to you. Well, we'll have to speak to the government about that one because I don't know how they're going to fix it. Thank you so much. If you just joined me, where have you been? This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. More to come in the next hour. It's fast approaching 5 o'clock. For the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. But first, let's get your latest news headlines. Nana, thanks very much indeed. Your top stories at 5 o'clock. In Northern Ireland, the Stormont Assembly has failed to elect a new speaker. It comes after the Democratic Unionist Party decided not to support the process as part of its protest against the Northern Ireland Protocol. Sinn Féin Stormont leader Michelle O'Neill said the move has punished the electorate and she believes the public deserves better. The DUP warned, though, that the post-Brexit trading agreement isn't working and that the Northern Ireland Protocol puts peace at risk in the country. Former Brexit Minister Lord Frost says politicians need to find another way forward.
Make progress in Northern Ireland, you need the consent of both communities and all range of opinion. And it's very clear that that doesn't exist. And the DUP's refusing to nominate a speaker and to take part in the institution simply symbolises that fact. It doesn't cause it. It just makes it obvious. It makes clear what we have been saying for a long time, which is that you can only proceed by consensus.
Well, in other news today, Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe's husband says the Prime Minister didn't explicitly apologise for how her detention in Iran had been handled. The former British aid worker, who was held captive for 6 years, met Boris Johnson for the first time since returning to the UK back in March. She told the Prime Minister today she'd lived in the shadow of his words, which had had a big impact on her for the best part of 4.5 years. Richard Radcliffe said there were lessons to be learned from the handling of his wife's detention.
She once said to me, I just want you to know that the mistake, the comments in 2017 had a lasting impact, and even when I was being interrogated at the airport, interrogated just before my last day, they brought up and said, listen, just tell us now, because obviously your foreign secretary and then Prime Minister reveals what you've been doing. You can tell us what you were really doing. It wasn't just you on holiday. She said, no, I lived with that for ages. I know it was a mistake, but it lingered.
Unions are threatening national strikes over government plans to axe around 90,000 civil service jobs. The Prime Minister wants to free up billions of pounds to ease the cost of living crisis. Downing Street hasn't ruled out compulsory redundancies, but it's hoped a lot of the cuts will occur through natural wastage. Brexit Opportunities Minister Jacob Rees-Mogg says the cull will make the government more efficient.
What is being proposed is a hiring freeze. Up to 38,000 people leave the civil service every year. So over 2 to 3 years, that's how you achieve this number. And then if those jobs are essential, ministers can sign off people being moved into them so that you can continue the level of service simply with a smaller number of people.
Jacob Rees-Mogg. The UK has announced 12 new sanctions against Russia, targeting President Putin's financial network, including those of his wider family. The Foreign Secretary, who's in Germany for a G7 meeting, says pressure also needs to be applied to Moscow by supplying more weapons to Ukraine. The EU has announced it's providing a further £425 million worth of military support, and it hopes a deal can be reached for embargo on Russian oil. Here, Colleen Rooney has told the High Court she was worried Rebecca Vardy would try to explain it all away if she confronted her in person about allegedly leaking stories to the press. Giving evidence in the so-called Wagatha Christie libel trial, Mrs Rooney says a social media sting operation to try to expose the person betraying her was a last resort. Mrs Vardy denies the allegations. She leaked false stories, deleted WhatsApp messages or spoke to journalists. Elon Musk's £34.5 billion Twitter deal has been put on hold, but he says he's still committed to the acquisition. The Tesla CEO says he's waiting for data on the number of spam and fake accounts, which are thought to represent less than 5% of users. One of Mr Musk's key aims is, in his words, to defeat the spam bots. And Her Majesty the Queen has attended day 2 of the Royal Windsor Horse Show, smiling and looking relaxed. There had been speculation she might not make it to the annual event after missing the state opening of Parliament. But more than 500 horses and 1,000 performers taking part in the grounds of Windsor Castle wasn't something she was about to miss. The monarch has attended every year, in fact, since it began in 1943. It's the first major event in the Queen's Platinum Jubilee festivities calendar, celebrating her 70-year reign. You're with GB News, more news as it happens. Now more from Nana.
So it's just coming up to 6 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of those big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall and also broadcaster Danny Kelly. Still to come, each Friday at 5, we'll put the spotlight on a particular guest or subject matter in my feature Friday Focus. In a moment, we'll be discussing no-fault evictions and why they're going to be banned. Among the 38 bills outlined during the state opening of Parliament was the Renters Reform Bill, which will abolish no-fault evictions and strengthen landlords' rights of possession. It will also seek to provide a fair and effective market for both tenants and landlords. But will it leave renters vulnerable and landlords stuck with problem tenants? For my Great British Debate this hour, I'll be asking, should we sacrifice civil service jobs to ease the cost of living? Boris Johnson has ordered ministers to slash the size of the civil service by a fifth to free up billions for tax cuts. That's over 90,000 people who could lose their jobs, but the move could save around about £3.5 billion a year. That would free up resources to help ease the cost of living through tax cuts or other measures. Although on the flip side, they'll have a lot of people unemployed and be paying unemployment benefit. So I'll be asking, should the UK sacrifice jobs to ease the cost of living? You can get in touch, gbviews at gbnews.uk, or tweet me at gbnews. So it's time for Friday Focus, and this week I'm looking at no-fault evictions and why they're going to be banned. Now, the Queen's speech delivered by Prince Charles highlighted private rental reform as a priority for the next parliamentary year. And among the 38 bills outlined during the state opening of Parliament was the Renters Reform Bill, which will abolish no-fault evictions and, of course, as I said, strengthen landlords' rights of possession and hopefully provide a fair and effective market for both landlords and tenants. So I'm joined now by the Head of Public Affairs at Shelter, Alistair Harper. Alistair, thank you so much for joining me. Right, so no-fault evictions, really ideally we wanted to get the detail on that first. But Alistair, what do you know of no-fault evictions? What does it mean?
Well, basically, we've had a system in place since the 1980s which reflected a private rented sector which was designed to be flexible, designed to be short-term. Since that time, it's more than doubled in size. We've seen affordability of ownership getting out of reach for far too many people. So people have been left stranded in the private rented sector with rights designed around a system that no longer exists. So what is currently the case is a landlord can evict their tenants for no reason whatsoever, hugely disrupting their lives, disrupting the schooling of children, ending any sense of day-to-day certainty for these people. And we know that one slaps down every 7 minutes on the doorstep that families learn that they are being evicted through no fault of their own. So that's been in place for far too long. It doesn't reflect what's needed. It doesn't reflect the balance that's needed between tenants and their landlords. So it's good news the government's committed to get rid of it. We just need to crack on.
Yeah, but you say that. So I've been a landlord myself for over 20 years. I know I don't look old enough. Thank you very much for that. I saw your lips moving. You never said that, but never mind. You meant to say that, didn't you?
I was on the tip of my tongue.
It was on the tip of your tongue. But if I want my tenants to leave, I want my tenants to leave. Why should I have a situation where I can't just decide that I don't want these tenants in my property anymore?
Yeah, and that's what will be the case. If a good landlord who wants to take back their property will have the means to do so. This isn't about ending any eviction for any reason at any point. It's to get rid of the idea that, frankly, the ones that let good landlords down by acting with a revenge over a complaint that's been made, a fix that needed doing, and they think, I'm just going to get rid of that tenant now. Or just very eccentric things that we see in horrific cases in our services around the country. Cases I've heard of about in Bournemouth, where a landlord just decides he doesn't much fancy having those tenants there anymore. There's no particular reason.
But it's his house. But it's his house. Look, if you're in my house and I decide I don't want you in my house, I don't need to give you a reason. I'll be like, sling your hook, I don't want you in here anymore. I don't... Why should... I'm just, you know... I know how difficult, how clever the system is. So you're talking in a way as if, you know, most landlords are actually very good people, and lots of them are accidental landlords. So they bought one house and they bought another one. That's how it worked with me. I didn't mean to end up acquiring an empire. No, I haven't got one, really. But, you know, most people are that way. So if you then decide that the tenants can leave your property in a state... I've had people leave the house with cockroaches in it. I've had people run off and not pay the rent. Thankfully, I had rent protection. I've had everything happen. I've had people completely destroy the entire house, pretty much. You know, and I've, as a landlord, have had to bear the brunt of a lot of it, although there have been help. And landlords get stuck with tenants who are stuck in their home, especially over the pandemic, who didn't pay. It's almost as though you think, this sounds like... It doesn't sound great. I mean, what's your view on that?
Well, first of all, don't worry. What this is about is giving landlords a tool to be professionals. All those cases you talked about will still be able to get evictions for arrears, antisocial behaviour, for extreme damage, etc. You don't have to worry about that. What this is about is, while it may be your property, it's people's home, and people have great uncertainty living in that home, and then it's not like... Almost half of rental tenants have no savings at all, so it's not like these people are on the tip of ownership.
Well, a lot of people who own a house haven't got any savings either. I mean, you know, that's not dissimilar to most people who own a house.
And at least they have the asset of the home that they can sell, and that's considerable. These people who are renting...
You might be in negative equity. I mean, it's not all... I mean, you know, it's not all... you know, roses.
No, it's not simple, but what is the reality for people facing the situation where they suddenly find that they're being evicted for no reason of their own is much greater disruption to their children, to their lives. They have to find a new home. The property prices, inflation, renting has never cost more. We're facing a huge challenge here. So this gives some of the balancing acts to make it a bit of a fairer system. But I agree, in the long term, what we need is secure housing for everyone, secure and affordable housing. So that's why this needs to go alongside a new era of investing in new social housing.
And your view on rent protection, what's that? Rent capping. What's your view on that?
I think that it's sensible to have a system where rent is predictable and can be managed around, but in terms of what is the reality of what needs to happen, far better for people would be to have a big investment in the scale of social housing across the country, so people have a rent that is genuinely affordable for them to live on, for them to plan their lives from, so that they can eventually move into ownership if that's the tenure that they want to get to, as it is for many people. What is less helpful is the insecurity of private rented sector being forced upon people, it not being a choice of flexibility, but the only option that's possible.
Well, Alistair, I'll come back to you, but right now I'm going to have a chat with the Director of Policy at the National Residential Landlords Association, Chris Norris. Chris, thank you very much for joining me. Now, Alistair's painted a picture of this no-fault eviction as a good thing for both landlords and tenants alike. What are the issues with scrapping no-fault evictions?
Well, I think the issues with the reform we're looking at the moment are not necessarily around scrapping Section 21, as it's called, the no-fault eviction. They're about what we replace it with. So I think there's an awful lot in what Alistair said that I'd agree with. Not everything, of course, but an awful lot there. And I think what we need to get to is a balance whereby those tenants can have security in their own home, but also a landlord can have certainty about the way they run their business and about the income that they'll get from that investment. The difficulty is that at the moment, the system doesn't work especially well for either party. And that's why you find landlords using the no-fault process, when actually there is pretty much always a problem there that the landlord needs to end the tenancy. Landlords don't wake up in the morning and think, well, I'll end a tenancy today. I'll end someone's tenancy. I will take away their home. They look at a tenancy that's failing. They look at a tenancy that may be subject to antisocial behaviour, or there may be significant rent arrears. They may need to sell a property. And at the moment, the easiest way, or quite often the only guaranteed way that they know they'll get vacant possession, is by using that no-fault process. So what we really want to focus on now is, I think we've accepted that no fault will go, but we need to make sure that it's replaced by the kind of grounds and the kind of process in the courts that mean that landlords can still run their businesses and, crucially, provide those homes.
Because my concern is that it'll lead to nightmare tenants taking advantage of landlords. I mean, I've had nightmare tenants, but thankfully I had rent protection, and it was, and they took over. But I was able to serve a Section 21. Now that's the issue. If you can't serve a Section 21, which is a no-fault eviction, it feels as though the landlord is constantly being punished, as though people assume landlords are these wealthy people who have all this money and property, and there seems to be a bitterness towards them. Am I imagining that, or is that a general view that you're getting?
Oh, you're certainly not imagining that. We're not a popular group. And I think there certainly is a view that landlords have very deep pockets and don't necessarily need the same protections. We share those concerns, to be honest. I mean, the concern that there isn't an appropriate way to end a tenancy when you need to end it is a very, very significant concern for us. And I don't quite agree with Alistair when he says there's nothing to worry about in terms of good landlords not being able to end tenancies when they need to. I think we really, really need to see the detail of what these additional grounds will be, and crucially what the government is going to do around the courts system, the courts service, because you'll know as well as I do, the reason you might use that Section 21 notice is because you know that you've got a guarantee that it won't get held up in the courts and that you will get that possession notice at the end of it. When you go through what's called the Section 8 notice, which is the fault ground that we'll all have to rely on, you don't have that same guarantee, and we don't have the capacity in the court service to be able to have the security we need.
So Section 8, just very briefly, if you could just describe it very briefly, what it is.
Of course, yeah. So it comes down to when there's a breach in a contract. So when you sign up to what's called an assured short-hold tenancy, the kind of tenancy that most landlords use, certainly in England and Wales, you have a number of predefined reasons why you might bring that tenancy to an end. Now, Section 21 at the moment means you don't have to use one of those reasons. If you're outside of the fixed term, so outside of the contract term you've agreed, you can just serve 2 months' notice and the court will award you possession. If you don't have that, you have to rely on one of these grounds. I think there are 17 grounds. Most commonly, it's rent arrears, if a certain amount of rent is owed, or it could be some other tenancy breach. You'd cite that and you'd go through the court and prove that you deserve the property back.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for talking to me. That's Chris Norris. He's the Director of Policy at the National Landlords Association. I'm going to come back to Alistair. Alistair, so you heard what he said, and I, having been on the receiving end of it, know that tenants are quite savvy with the law, and they know their rights, in a sense. And are we not entering into a place that could actually... whilst I understand if somebody's got their life and their schooling and all this in this one space, they can always move to another house. There's usually another property that they can go to. But ultimately, it's the landlord's house.
Well, it's the landlord's asset, and it needs to be dealt with professionally. Chris was very helpful there. He just outlined the issue that landlords want to be able to take back their property if people are in arrears, if they are damaging the property, etc. And then he also very eloquently went on to say how that's possible right now through Section 8. So all we're asking for is...
But he also said Section 8 doesn't offer the same security that Section 21 does.
It doesn't give you a no-fault eviction.
You've got to go through the courts.
You need to have done it,
And that's the issue. The court system is pretty slow, and tenants can continue to occupy that property during the whole thing, and you could potentially not get any rent for a whole time, and then you as a landlord could end up in arrears with a mortgage and everything else like that. So that's what we're saying, that whilst if Section 21 goes, it means that the landlord is then left with the liability of that property whilst you're fighting through the courts on a Section 8 or something similar to it.
I think it's fair when we're housing people that we follow a fair process
Yes, of course.
that is within the law, and this is about making that law work. It's trying to help landlords to be a professional system. It will help get rid of that stigma that Chris and yourself identified, that people that don't have good views on landlords on the whole, and that's because of the few that are creating misery. That I know of people we're trying to help who are in homes of severe disrepair. They're trying to follow the process that means their landlords give them a healthy home that they deserve for their children, but they're scared to do so because they think if they complain, they'll get a Section 21 notice. So this is trying to get, also, as you say, many landlords are accidental landlords. They inherited or went through a situation that they didn't expect to become landlords. Within the Renters Reform Bill will also be the ability to reach out to landlords to tell them exactly what the rules are, be able to give them the information they need so that they're able to do their job properly. Because it's their job, it's not just a magic money box that comes in once a month. It is deciding to be a landlord, is renting a home fairly, properly, making sure it's decent, making sure people can be safe in it.
I don't think that any legislation will stop somebody from getting somebody out of their house to potentially get more money or something like that. I think it's almost an impossible thing to expect legislation to cover that. If something, I don't think just because something needs repaired or whatever, that's not possible to. That sort of landlord will always be that sort of landlord.
Well, I hope this will go a long way towards making a distinction between who are the good landlords and who are the ones who are abusing the system and abusing the millions of people in this country trying to stay safe in their home.
Well, listen, Alistair, thank you so much for joining me. It's really good to talk to you. That's Alistair Harper. He is from Shelter. He's head of public affairs. Interesting stuff. Well, stay with me. This is GBNews on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come, the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should the UK sacrifice jobs to ease the cost of living? Boris Johnson has ordered ministers to slash the size of the civil service by a fifth to free up billions for tax cuts. That's over 90,000 people who could lose their jobs. But the move could save about $3.5 billion a year. That would free up resources to help ease the cost of living through tax cuts or other measures. So, after the break, I'll be asking, should the UK sacrifice jobs to ease the cost of living? First, let's get some weather.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. It's turned into a fine day for most of us, but it's still fairly windy in the north and there is some rain around. Most of it associated with a couple of weather fronts crossing the far north of Scotland, so northern and western Scotland, and for some parts of northwest England, mainly over the hills, it's a damp afternoon. A lot of cloud in the north as well, northern England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, but some breaks developing as we head through the evening. The wind also easing following a blustery day, patchy cloud for Wales in the southwest, but lengthy clear spells elsewhere. And as that wind dies down with those clear spells, well, it'll be a fresh night. Temperatures dipping into the single figures for many and down to 2 to 4 Celsius in some sheltered spots. Nevertheless, it's a bright start to the weekend for many of us. Some outbreaks of rain in the far north of Scotland, but even here it tends to dry up and brighten up by the afternoon. Lots of sunshine breaking out widely across the UK. Saturday looking like the best day of the weekend for dry and fine weather. And with that sunshine, temperatures up to 16, 18 Celsius, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Could see 20 in the east of Scotland, but more widely 20 to 24 Celsius further south across England and parts of Wales. But as temperatures rise, there is a threat of showers or thunderstorms breaking out on Saturday night, initially southwestern areas and then developing more widely across the southern half of the UK. The greatest risk of lightning around the English Channel coast, but it's going to keep things mild overnight. So the brightest skies first thing across Scotland and Northern Ireland on Sunday morning. But even here there'll be some cloud and showers pushing into southern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland during the morning. Further south, a brighter end to Saturday, but further showers arriving overnight. And then Monday, Tuesday look more unsettled with rain or showers for many.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle, and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Co.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's coming up to 25 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Welcome on board. If you've just tuned in, where on earth have you been? Because in this hour, I'm asking, should the UK sacrifice jobs to ease the cost of living? Now, Boris Johnson has ordered ministers to slash the size of the civil service by a fifth to free up billions for tax cuts. The Prime Minister used a cost of living cabinet meeting in the Midlands yesterday to order his top team to redouble their efforts to ease the financial pressure on struggling families. Over 90,000 people could lose their jobs, but this could save about £3.5 billion a year. That would free up resources to help ease the cost of living through tax cuts or other measures. So, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should the UK sacrifice jobs to ease the cost of living? Right, so I'm joined now by Ben Harris-Quinney. He is the chairman for the Bay Group, Conservative think tank. Hello, Ben. Hello, Ben, how are you doing? Right, so talk to me. Right, so talk to me about this, Ben. What's the deal here? Because they're suggesting that 91,000 people or so could lose their jobs. Do you think this is a good move for the government?
I think it's an essential move. The government needs to go far beyond this in making savings, but it's the right approach for Jacob Rees-Mogg in his department. If you cast your mind back to 2010, the Conservatives came in on the basis of getting the government's budget under control, cutting the debt and cutting the deficit. Since then, our national debt has tripled, which I certainly wouldn't call austerity, and places us in a very perilous position going into what is potentially a recession. That means there's danger of the cost of borrowing rising considerably alongside inflation, and the government hasn't got really any contingency. They haven't got the space to borrow more to do some of the things that people may need in an economic crisis. So there is a danger of the government entering into another debt spiral to continue to rely on borrowing as it has been. And I think what is urgent is that the government stops borrowing, creates a surplus. We would like to see them go far further and make 250 billion in cuts so that they are able to get a handle on inflation, stop printing money, and start delivering for people's immediate needs rather than a lot of the projects that I don't think deliver actually for what the public want.
So you think it's a good move for them to reduce the civil service?
It's part of what needs to be a much wider efficiency drive, because whilst it's always a bad thing for people to lose their jobs, you've got to look at the overall picture. You've got to look at the size of government spending, the fact that we've added almost 100,000 new civil servants since 2016, and the government can't simply go on spending and printing money and raising taxes. But that's led us to where we are today, and it clearly hasn't worked.
Well, what the hell are they doing, though? I mean, look, if you try and get yourself a passport or a driving licence, good luck with that. I mean, what on earth are they doing anyway? And a lot of them staying at home, not that anybody objects to you working from home, but if the job isn't being done as efficiently and you're at home, then that doesn't look good. That's not a good look. I'm wondering where they'll cut those jobs. But what about the government looking at some of that money that was given fraudulently as well? Is that another place they're going to look to recoup money? I know they're cutting, but what about recouping?
Well, I think they should be. Billions went out through the COVID pandemic, and I think it's not only a matter of saving; it's a matter of principle. That these people that have fraudulently taken money from the government at the time of worst crisis need to be criminally punished, let alone the money recouped. But what we want to see, I think, is radical action from the government, a recognition that projects like Net Zero, international aid, HS2 are not going to deliver for the country as a whole. And what the people need now is relief from the cost of living crisis and radical action, the kind of radical action that Margaret Thatcher brought in with monetarism to get a handle on inflation, because what we are heading for is stagflation, is a stagnant or a recessionary economy coupled with double-digit inflation, and that's going to hurt everyone in this country, and that's what the government needs to be laser focused on.
That's not good. Stagflation is the last thing we want. Ben Harris-Quinney, thank you very much. He's the chairman for the Bow Group.
Thank you.
I'm also joined now by the head of lifestyle economics at the Institute of Economic Affairs, Christopher Snowdon. Christopher, thank you for joining us. So what do you think, then? A good move by the government to reduce the civil service, 91,000 people going?
Yeah, absolutely, step in the right direction. I mean, the most extraordinary statistic is that even after we've got rid of these 91,000 people, the civil service will still be employing as many people as it did in 2016. The government has got fatter and fatter over time, and if you don't trim it from time to time, it's just going to continue growing exponentially. So people understand, I think, why we had to take on more civil servants to get Brexit done, and also to deal with the pandemic. But Brexit has been done, and the pandemic is basically over now, and so the extra people that we took on in these unusual emergency periods, obviously need to go. Hopefully, most of it can be done through voluntary and natural redundancies. What we don't want to see, however, is a whole load of people just taken on as consultants. So the size of the government doesn't really shrink, and the amount of money that we're spending doesn't really shrink. What we need to do, really, at the core of it, is to give civil servants less to do. Being outside the EU should mean they have less to do in some regards, because a lot of the civil service was a lot of civil servants were essentially taking the endless cascade of EU regulation and turning it into British law.
I also think that we should actually get rid of the civil service and reduce that. Thank you so much. That's Christopher Snowdon. He's head of lifestyle economics, the Institute of Economic Affairs. Really good to talk to you. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, we'll continue our Great British debate this hour. I'm asking, should the UK sacrifice jobs to ease the cost of living? You'll hear the thoughts from my panel, former Conservative advisor Claire Pissell and also broadcaster Danny Kelly. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thank you, Nana. The top stories. In Northern Ireland, the Stormont Assembly has failed to elect a new speaker. It comes after the Democratic Unionist Party decided not to support the process as part of its protest against the Northern Ireland Protocol. Sinn Féin Stormont leader Michelle O'Neill said the move has pushed the electorate, saying the public deserves better. Former Brexit Minister Lord Frost says politicians need to find another way forward.
Make progress in Northern Ireland, you need the consent of both communities and all range of opinion. And it's very clear that that doesn't exist. And the DUP's refusing to nominate a speaker and to take part in the institution simply symbolises that fact. It doesn't cause it. It just makes it obvious. It makes clear what we have been saying for a long time, which is that you can only proceed by consensus.
And in other news today, Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe's husband says the Prime Minister did not explicitly apologise for how her detention in Iran was handled. The former British aid worker, who was held captive for 6 years, met Boris Johnson for the first time since she came back to the UK in March. She told the Prime Minister she'd lived in his shadow, which had a big impact on her for the best part of 4.5 years. And unions are threatening national strikes over government plans to axe around 90,000 civil service jobs. The Prime Minister wants to free up billions of pounds to ease the cost of living crisis. Downing Street hasn't ruled out compulsory redundancies, but it's hoped a lot of the cuts will occur through natural attrition. And smiling and looking relaxed, Her Majesty the Queen has attended the Royal Windsor Horse Show. The monarch has attended every year since it began in 1943. It's the first major event in the Queen's Platinum Jubilee festivities, celebrating her 70-year reign. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. You're with GB News, and Nana is back in just a moment.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Looking at the markets today, the pound is 1.22 to the dollar, the pound is 1.18 to the euro, and the price of gold currently standing at £1,478.72 an ounce. And that's your GB News Finance Report.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Co.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
So good afternoon. If you just tuned in, welcome on board. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Don't forget, we also have the fabulous GB News app where you can watch this programme and all of the others. You can even stream the show live on YouTube. It's now time, though, for our Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, should the UK sacrifice jobs to ease the cost of living? Boris Johnson has ordered ministers to slash the size of the civil service by a fifth to free up billions for tax cuts. The Prime Minister used a cost of living cabinet meeting in the Midlands yesterday to order his top team to redouble their efforts to ease the financial pressure on struggling families. Over 90,000 people could lose their jobs, but the move would save around about £3.5 billion a year. That would, of course, free up resources to ease the cost of living through tax cuts or other measures. That's if we actually get the benefit of it. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should the UK sacrifice jobs to ease the cost of living? Let's see what my panel make of that. With me, I have former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall and also broadcaster Danny Kelly. Right, so what do you think then? Should we sort of axe some of those jobs at the civil service? Danny, go on, surprise me.
I hate to see 91,000 people lose their jobs. But the second guest said something incredibly pertinent. They were only hired...
What, something different from the first?
They both had very similar views, yes, you're right. So the fact that they were hired because of COVID and because of Brexit, if I was the government, I'd have given them short-term contracts. I'd have said, OK, listen, we're going to recruit you, but it's only because of Brexit. You know, we imagine this thing's going to be for the next 3 or 4 years, so we're going to employ you to 2020. Here's a 4-year contract. Then COVID comes along. OK, we need people now 20 to 2022. Here's a 2-year contract. That's how I would have done it. I hate 91,000 people, the prospect of them losing their jobs. But my best mate, or one of my pals, wanted to be an HGV driver. You know, when there was a shortage, a backlog, they couldn't get people to drive HGVs and food was running out at the supermarkets. And he couldn't get a driving licence because of how unionised and militant the DVLA was.
Well, nobody could get a driving licence. Try getting a passport. Good luck with that.
Exactly. So when I hear them saying, we want to work from home, the DVLA in Swansea isn't a safe environment because of COVID, and my pal can't get a job because of the bottleneck, and then I think, well, hang on, you're a bloated service. You shouldn't be. Listen, if you're bloated, you should be saying, I want to get back to work and give that lad in Coventry a driving licence.
But what about the impact? OK, so they lose 91,000 jobs. They're pretty useless when it comes to getting anything done. With fewer people, wouldn't it even be worse?
Potentially not, because of the COVID and the Brexit aspect. We don't need them all. There's 450,000 of them. I feel sorry for every 91,000 of them if they do indeed get the sack. There are loads of jobs out there, though. I think there's 1 million odd jobs out there
as
that
long as
need
they don't
filling.
end up on benefits, we end up paying for them, Claire.
Yeah, I mean, I think it also depends on what level of civil servant you're talking about, because there's a big difference between those at the top, the really senior civil servants who earn a lot of money, and general sort of administrative staff who don't. And everyone assumes the civil service is really well paid. Well, you know, it actually isn't. So if you're only going to cull sort of the lower end of the scale, it isn't going to make up the 3.5 billion that they keep saying, and it's not going to help because it's those people who do the work. What I think would be a much better way of looking at it, because I don't want to see 91,000 people out of a job, why don't you move them into the departments that are struggling, like the DVLA, like the Passport Office, like the DWP?
But then you wouldn't save the £3.5 billion. That's what they're saying.
But I don't even think that that's the true figure that they will save, because you will have to make people redundant. So you're going to have people that perhaps have a long service whose redundancy payment is going to be enormous. So I think you are going to end up paying out more and not saving for some years ahead. So I just don't buy the maths on this at all. And I think that if you have excess people in departments, which they will have, then you need to be able to put them into other departments that are struggling. And it might mean that you put some managers into somewhere like the DVLA and shake it up a bit, because that's only going to be good for the country as a whole. Because as you say, the Passport Office is in a real state at the moment. 10 weeks plus to get a passport is just appalling. So why don't we do something with those departments rather than just culling staff to make some savings, of which I don't believe the maths?
Claire, how about reducing some of the income? You mentioned the different type of civil servants. I think perhaps we could cut down some of the, cut some of the salaries of those people there as well. You know, because I think, I don't understand, some of them earning obviously more than the Prime Minister, which is ridiculous. So I think...
But they're only a handful. That's not going to contribute anything towards...
It's a lot.
Yeah, but not towards the 3.5 billion.
But this is what everyone says. This is what everyone says. It's only a handful. Well, lots of handfuls. Do a handful of those first, because that'll be a bit smaller handful of those. So otherwise you're going to have a huge handful of like 91,000 people at work, when you could actually cut the salaries of a load of these people, maybe a third of the number.
I don't think it is easy just to reduce someone's salary. They have employment rights. You can't just say, we're going to pay you 40% less.
I know.
I don't think they can do that.
It's absolutely ridiculous. I think they need
and you're dealing with a highly unionised and militant organisation.
Yeah, I know. I think it's ridiculous. I think they need to start as they mean to go on now, and start as I would cull the 91,000. Then anybody else who was employed in either the higher roles, the salaries will come down, full stop. And as for working at home, if the department isn't performing, then you won't be working at home.
You run the risk of not recruiting the brightest brains. If you're going to...
Sorry, I want to laugh.
If you're going to slash someone's salary by... I came up with a 40% figure. But if you're going to... You give me a figure, say 20%, 25. If you're going to slash the figure of someone who earns 100 grand, say, I don't know, and you're going to offer them 75 grand for a new job title, then are you going to get the brightest brain, or are you going to miss out on them?
So you think that the highest salary equals the brightest brain? I don't.
No, it's the most, it's the most power.
I don't equate money with the quality of... No, I certainly don't equate money with the quality of care or service, because I know that some people are just... Often you'll get somebody who's there just for the money, and in fact, then you end up with somebody who's there for the money and not the job itself. No, I want people who are passionate about the job. And if it's £75,000 as opposed to £100,000, if you said, Nana, would you like a double salary to go and work for another TV channel that isn't doing as well as this one? The answer would be absolutely not, even if they offer me more money. So I think it's not about money; it's about passion.
That's not the same.
You're passionate about.
That's not the same. If you're a bureaucrat, no, it's not, because your TV personality. The reason you're so good at what you do is because of your personality. We're talking about people who push pens for a living, who order.
No,
Yes,
not at all. And I do disagree with that because I've worked with civil servants. And you know what? I have met some of the brightest, cleverest people who are not paid a massive salary.
It's usually that way round.
And
But Nana's point is about the big salaries, though.
But that's a whole different argument. And you're suggesting that you need to keep those salaries to get the best people.
Yes.
Not necessarily.
And I'm saying
because I think that some of those people that I worked with could be promoted up to do these jobs, be on a slightly less than 200,000 salary.
Is that how much they are? 200?
Some of them are, absolutely. It's obscene amounts of money.
Well, that is
but
a lot.
the ones that I were dealing with were nowhere near that, and they were bright, they were clever, they were articulate, and they had passion for their job.
Exactly.
And those are the kind of people that I think the civil service need to promote upwards, rather than just going and cherry-picking from, you know, a university friend or someone from the diplomatic service that, you know, they think they should have that job. The whole civil service reform needs to happen.
So would you call the 91?
No, I wouldn't. I don't want to cull the 91 at all, because I think that within the civil service it's very hard to get rid of people, as we know. Why not start moving these people around? The government is serious about moving people out of London, getting Whitehall into places like Salford, for example, and Wolverhampton. Well, fine, do that. You can offer these jobs. If people then choose not to have them, that is their decision.
I don't think you're right with that.
I think you could cut London
No,
waiting.
I don't think you're right.
I think you could legally, legitimately cut London waiting for people who aren't travelling into London.
But you can't, if you like, you can't force someone who works in London to work in Wolverhampton by saying, if you don't, then you're going to lose your job, which is what you implied, I think.
Well, no, you get to
They don't want to
be
go to
offered
Wolverhampton.
redundant. I mean, I've had it in
They don't want to be
previous-
redundant.
OK, but this is employment, and I've had that in the private sector. Many years ago, the job I was in central London was moving somewhere into Hertfordshire.
Yeah.
And they said, your job can move there. And I said, well, no, that's very difficult for me to travel from Kent to, you know, the middle of Hertfordshire. And they said, OK, fine, and made me a redundancy package because my position in London was redundant. I had the option of keeping my job and moving it. But I said, no, I'm sorry, that doesn't work for me, and I got that.
I make these 91,000. They're not doing their jobs. Redundant or give them an offer somewhere
when
else.
it's so unionised, I think it's not as simplistic as you
No,
say.
It's not as simplistic, but I do think you can look
There
at
are
these
ways
packages.
around it.
There are ways around
Yeah.
it, and this is my whole argument where I started, that I don't think it's going to make the savings that are being promised, because you will have to pay redundancy packages, loss of sort of, you know, different bits that they have if they've had a long service, for example. They may have, you know, healthcare that may be put in there. There may be something else that they have, which is part of their package.
But
So
they've only
it's
been there
never
for a
going-
short period of time, though. You don't get the rights for...
No. But we're not. We don't know, do we? How many of these
I think I would look
91,000
at
are going to
those-
be short-term employees
I would look at the
anyway?
short-term ones first. I'd start to cull those, and then
But that's
and
sensible.
But that's what I would do. But actually, this does feel a bit like an afterthought anyway.
Yeah.
So they're attacking the cost of living by attacking the living. Really, you know what I mean? People are, you know, and actually it could be counterproductive in that those people could end up then claiming benefits because you've then made them redundant or, you know, taken their job
Thought
away.
they were the brightest of the bright.
No, that's irrelevant. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that if these people, 91,000 people, suddenly are pushed out of work, made redundant or whatever, then there'll be a proportion of those that then go on benefits, and you are then paying for the benefit. I actually think that realistically they should be looking at other things. Yes, cut the civil service, should be done anyway. And London waiting, if you're not working in London, forget it. You don't get that from working at home. It's ridiculous. But the higher salaries as well, I'd reduce the top level of earnings from there as well. So in the future, I wouldn't have people coming
May I
at
just
that
ask
level.
Claire, what sort of job, what sort of position earns you 200 grand a year then?
Oh, yeah.
That is one of the sort of senior, so a permanent secretary of a department. So the person that, you know, is in charge of a department, who reports into the minister, they will be earning that kind of salary.
And is there a Mandarin that follows him or her around that's earning like 100 grand?
Yes, yeah. I mean, there's a whole sliding scale.
it's
quite an
bloated
eye-opener.
in numbers
Of course,
and money.
absolutely is. But the
know
people that
it's
do the work are the ones
What
that
are they
are not
on?
on those salaries. 35,000. I mean, you know, there's a scale of different positions in the civil service. They
About
have a
30
scale.
odd grand.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying. So it's bloated, the people at the top are overpaid, and the people at the bottom are overworked.
I agree,
So-
200
and it's
grand's a
not
lot of dough.
Well, listen, today we've been asking, should the UK sacrifice jobs to ease the cost of living? And lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. Sam says, yes, jobs should be scrapped if they are unnecessary. Jamie says, from the sound of it, they hired a lot of people due to the COVID and Brexit, so it's returning civil service back to 2016. Staffing levels now are not required so much, so the cuts will be done by rehiring as people leave. Sophie says, yes, we should cut civil service jobs. Taxpayers get a bad deal. Emily says, my husband is a civil servant and does a great job. The criticism of civil servants in particular is unwarranted here. See, that's what... Yeah, there you go. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
I did hear that about bloated, unnecessary. So you feel a little bit like myself.
You've been thinking about food again, are you?
A little bit like myself.
Brad says a lot of civil service employees were recruited to sort out Brexit, the mess that Johnson helped cause. So that was a waste of money from all angles. You think? Right, let's see. It's time now for the quick fire debates, the part of the show where we discuss some of the day's other stories. So joining me, my panel today, former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall and also broadcaster Danny Kelly. First up, Spain is set to become the first country in Europe to give women menstrual leave if they're grappling with the painful periods. Women in Spain suffering severe pain during their periods will be permitted to have up to 3 days off work every month under law. What do you think of that, Claire? You're a woman. What do you reckon?
Oh, you see, this is where 50% of the population will hate me.
I can't have an opinion.
No, I don't think so. I think that there are things that you can do to solve every problem, and some women do suffer really, really badly. But I think, 3 days, I think there'll be some people that absolutely swing the lead and just use it as an excuse. So, no, we're women, we can get on with it, we're stronger than that.
What do you think sexist, Danny?
Well, to assume that because you go to Claire first, because you're a woman, so that's the opinion that you seek first. Yeah, I don't think that's sexist. Gender-based discrimination.
No, hang on.
No, I live with a woman. I live with a woman.
Can I finish?
Yes.
It's a fact. I went to her first, and my reasoning for going to her first was because she's a woman.
Well, that's what I've just said. You've just reinforced it.
No, I haven't.
Yes, you have.
Oh, yeah. That's the next story.
Baldy!
Oh, God, that's sexist now.
Anyway,
okay.
Well, we're going to have some fun with that. I can imagine, because I know that it can be crippling pain for a woman. And I can imagine if we were talking about... I hope I'm not disclosing anything sensitive here, but we're talking about your beautiful boys in hospital. Yeah. OK, just had your appendix out, his appendix out.
Yeah.
I remember as a kid having this grinding pain in my tummy, and it ended up being appendicitis. Now, if you're going to equalise that as far as pain threshold is concerned, with a really bad menstrual cycle, I can understand why someone would want some time off. But everyone's going to swing the lead.
Yeah.
Lots of people who are going to... The sort of people on a Monday morning after too many pints say, oh, I've got COVID or I've got the flu. They're the ones who are going to say, I've got a really heavy period.
No, well, I think, look, really heavy periods in that, and pain, pain during...
I'm a bloke, so I don't
really...
Oh, no, so
now you can...
I said that on purpose. I said that on purpose.
Well, no, you're right. But no, because you obviously, you've never menstruated, so you wouldn't know, and it's fair enough, and that's why I came to Claire, because you would understand. But from an actual experience point of view. But, I mean, look, some people have really, really painful periods, and that is a condition. So I would say that people who have that condition, they could disclose to their employer that they have a condition, which means that, and they could have that verified by the doctor if so. But I wouldn't say that every woman should just, if you have a pain...
You could lie to a doctor, you could blag a doctor, anything.
No, I mean, there are some
really?
women who suffer so extremely badly, and I have a friend who suffered with endometriosis, which is an extremely painful condition, and she was absolutely bent double for a few days.
I know I'm not a woman, but I could bend double for a few days to say to a doctor I've got a heavy or a painful.
You have no idea.
If I was a woman, I might identify as one next week.
I'd like to see you give birth. You've got probably somebody in there anyway, right? Oh, no! There's room for them. Next, Tony Finn of West Yorkshire is currently in line for compensation after an employment tribunal ruled calling a man bald as sexual harassment. A judge concluded that commenting on the man's baldness in a workplace is equivalent to remarking on the size of a woman's breasts. I'm going to start with you, Danny. Do you think that calling a man bald is sexual harassment?
I'm so pleased the producer put a picture of a bald head on the screen, just in case anyone... just in case people weren't sure about what a bald head looked like. I don't class it as sexist, but then saying that, I haven't got a problem with my baldness. When I was 25, 26 and I started to lose my hair, I was incredibly sensitive about it. I used to buy products that would make it look fuller.
We shouldn't laugh.
We shouldn't, but...
Did you spray something on?
So if someone... well, I didn't go to that extreme. And when it was so liberating when I actually had it all shaved off. It's a liberation. But I would take exception if someone kept on saying, oh, baldy, and started smacking me head and everything.
Yeah, but that's an insult. I mean, the context is king, really. If somebody says it they often say that bald men make very good
lovers.
Apparently. And would they take that as a sexual harassment by somebody saying that, well, you're bald, so you must be...
Well, it's inappropriate, isn't it?
Well, no, but they wouldn't say that.
I bet you're good in bed. You got nowhere.
Would you be offended if somebody said that?
It depends on who delivered it.
No,
why do I point to you, Nana?
Because it's almost a compliment, really, isn't it? No, I don't know. Is it sexist? I don't think so. Women can be bald. I'm bald under this. You've not seen it yet. No, no, but I could be. And that it makes the assumption that bald people are men, and that's not really true.
No, but I think it also depends on who's saying it. As you say, I mean, if it is a friend of yours who makes reference to the fact that you're bald, you'll probably just go, oh, yeah, and you'll make some comment about what they're wearing or their personality or whatever it is. I think it's a context thing. And do I think it's sexual harassment? No, I don't. I think we're all a little sensitive.
It's the context. Right, and also earlier this week, London Mayor Sadiq Khan took a trip to California where he did no work and visited a cannabis dispensary. Mr Khan was so impressed with the outlet and production line that he has since announced the formation of a new group to look at decriminalising cannabis in Britain. So, should we decriminalise it, Dan?
I don't know why the Mayor of London flew to America to look at a cannabis farm. There's thousands of them.
Yes.
There's thousands of them on his doorstep in London. I don't smoke dope. I don't really know what the Mayor of London's flying to California to speak to people about cannabis. I think the police would probably say yes, maybe, because they're dealing with a lot of people. But then you have the argument that it's a gateway drug to more illicit substances like cocaine.
Anything could be a gateway, but also the fact that the super skunk, the skunks aren't like the normal cannabis. They're sort of extra powerful, and a lot of people end up
know a lot about it.
Yeah, they do. I think
psychosis.
Yeah, and it's a really tricky one because you want to take it out of the criminal justice system. Somebody with a couple of joints on them is really not going to be a master criminal. But I think he didn't need to go there. He could have just gone onto the streets of London.
He could have done. So why didn't he? Because he doesn't go on the streets of London. He certainly can't solve the knife crime. Perhaps he should stay here in the UK and try and do that. Well, on today's show, we've been asking, should we scrap the Northern Ireland Protocol? According to our Twitter poll, 88% of you say yes, 12% of you say no. I've got to say, you've been a pleasure. Thank you so much to my panel, former Conservative advisor Blair Pearsall, and also broadcaster Danny Kelly. And as ever, thank you to you for watching. I'll be back at 4 tomorrow. Take care.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. It's turned into a fine day for most of us, but it's still fairly windy in the north and there is some rain around. Most of it associated with a couple of weather fronts crossing the far north of Scotland, so northern and western Scotland, and for some parts of northwest England, mainly over the hills, it's a damp afternoon. A lot of cloud in the north as well, northern England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, but some breaks developing as we head through the evening. The wind also easing following a blustery day, patchy cloud for Wales in the southwest, but lengthy clear spells elsewhere. And as that wind dies down with those clear spells, well, it'll be a fresh night. Temperatures dipping into the single figures for many and down to 2 to 4 Celsius in some sheltered spots. Nevertheless, it's a bright start to the weekend for many of us. Some outbreaks of rain in the far north of Scotland, but even here it tends to dry up and brighten up by the afternoon. Lots of sunshine breaking out widely across the UK. Saturday looking like the best day of the weekend for dry and fine weather. And with that sunshine, temperatures up to 16, 18 Celsius, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Could see 20 in the east of Scotland, but more widely 20 to 24 Celsius further south across England and parts of Wales. But as temperatures rise, there is a threat of showers or thunderstorms breaking out on Saturday night, initially southwestern areas and then developing more widely across the southern half of the UK. The greatest risk of lightning around the English Channel coast.